So a lot of producers are curious about what impacts their haying operations might have on wildlife. So the peak fawning for Oklahoma is usually late May, early June, and that is a really vulnerable time for deer fawns if you're cutting hay during that period. That's also that May-June period is a really important time of the year for rabbit production and also a lot of ground nesting birds. Most of those ground nesting birds are finished by early to mid-July, and by that time most deer fawns are up and mobile, rabbit production's generally tailing off. And also another vulnerable species, which is the box turtle, which gets hit and killed a lot of times by mowing equipment. By July, when it's getting hot, they tend to be underground more. So if you can delay haying until mid-July, you're going to miss a lot of the wildlife that would be susceptible to mortality. Also, that is a good time to optimize hay quality and quantity on native hay fields. But some producers want to cut that native hayfield multiple times during the summer. So they'll cut in June and then maybe later in the summer. But a problem with that is research has shown that cutting hay on native fields multiple times, that tends to lead to undesirable plant species long term. And that's not an ideal situation for a native hayfield. So we generally recommend that producers only cut native grass once a year for hay production. So waiting a little bit later into the summer, you can get a lot of tonnage that's high quality, but also minimize the negative impacts to wildlife. Now there's also the situation of just mowing a field, a native field, where you're not actually interested in taking the hay off, but you're just wanting to knock the grass cover back, maybe for fire prevention or aesthetics or brush control. So if that's your objective, when is the ideal time to do this? So a lot of people want to do it at the end of the summer, going into the fall. But unfortunately, if you do that, you've removed all the cover for that site. So species like bobwhite, rabbits, and a lot of wintering sparrows really don't have a lot of use of that field throughout the whole winter. So like the field I'm standing in today, it's been barren all winter. We're entering spring now, and it's had very little wildlife use. Whereas if the producer had delayed that mowing until the end of the winter, they could have met their objective of brush control. They could have even timed it to take advantage of, right before our fire season, which is typically late winter, and still provided wildlife cover throughout all the fall and most of the winter. Now there's going to be situations where you probably have to mow in the fall or you have to cut hay earlier in the summer. It's not the optimum time for wildlife. But one thing you might consider, if you've got multiple pastures and large acreages, just attempt to leave some cover during the summer for nesting and some cover during the winter for quail and rabbits and sparrows. Even if you have to mow or hay some, if you've got some cover on your property during those years, you can still have wildlife and hay production.